Yes, we've had 4 arrests so far, Andy. It was yesterday afternoon. What looks like 10 people trying to break into a squat. Police intervened, 4 arrested, and 4 have been charged this morning, 3 with carrying points and blades and 1 for an assault on a police officer.
And you have some 5,000 officers on the streets at the moment?
That's right, yes. As I've said to you before, this is a very complex operation. It started at the weekend with the march that we saw going very peacefully through the London, and now we've got all the movements of the day, along with whatever protests come forward today.
Now tell us about the setup behind us, Commander. This is the goal control for this operation. What can we see here?
Well, as you look, you can see that clearly we've got access to all the CCTV cameras that you've spoken about. These are not only the police cameras, but also local authority. We utilise your feed, thank you very much. And then you've got all the colleagues that are now working on the communications channels with their officers that are on the ground for this very complex operation.
And of course, you're not just commanding officers from the Metropolitan Force, you have other officers from... We're
going to leave, Andy, because there we are, President Barack Obama and Gordon Brown about to speak.
Well, anti-capitalist protesters, meanwhile, stormed the Royal Bank of Scotland in the City of London earlier. They smashed windows and wrecked equipment. The attack marred a day of largely peaceful demonstrations that saw 5,000 campaigners converge on the square mile ahead of the G20 summit.
Around 5,000 police, some in riot gear, were on duty to deal with trouble. They say 20 people have been arrested. Well, our colleague Ben Brown has been spending the day in the city, and we can speak to him now. Ben, what's happening?
Well, it's been pretty chaotic in the last few minutes. In fact, if we just push our camera over there, you can see some of the demonstrators are now getting what were the police barricades, and they've set them up across the street. And behind them, I think you can see the smoke where they've started a few fires. We're not quite sure what's burning there. But then if we come back the other way and just look behind me, you can see the lines of riot police, and throughout the afternoon there have been constant scuffles really between the riot police, these phalanxes of riot police, and also the protesters over there. At one stage at around lunchtime, the protesters went up to the Royal Bank of Scotland building just up Threadneedle Street and started smashing some of the windows there. And ever since then, really, there have been these constant clashes between the police and the protesters. Many people saying the violence hasn't been as bad as had been initially anticipated. Well, let's get a report now on the day's events here in the City of London from my colleague Daniel Sanford.
It was the moment when protest turned to disorder. As anarchists, surrounded by photographers, smashed their way into the Royal Bank of Scotland, right next to the Bank of England. There were moments when the police came close to losing control as the crowd swirled around the maze of streets in the heart of the city, London's financial district. But the demonstrators only numbered a few thousand, and the real troublemakers far fewer than that. At times the police chose to deploy in riot helmets. And at least one of the crowd appeared to have been injured, though he continued to taunt officers. And once again, scuffles broke out between police and protesters.
They've got sticks and helmets, we've got nothing at all. They came charging in, they knocked his tooth out, they hit me in the head twice.
The disorder didn't compare to the poll tax riots or the June the 18th protests of 1999. But on more than one occasion, the police were forced to make a tactical retreat. And several people were arrested, this man for allegedly breaching the peace.
Fight for our right to protest, to show these people up here what people are prepared to do to show them what people feel.
Much of the anger was directed at the bankers, but it wasn't allowed to spiral out of control.
In a tactic we've seen before, police officers have hemmed in the protesters on all sides around the Bank of England, preventing anyone from leaving the demonstration or joining it.
There were certain elements in that crowd, certain determined elements that were being very provocative to police. They've caused damage to at least one bank. We'll see what else and other damage has been caused as we move forward. And I think that they were determined to spoil the day and spoil the message for some of those other protesters that have come to the City of London today.
Police in London didn't only have to deal with protesters converging on the Bank of England from 4 different directions, they also had to handle a separate demonstration just up the road in Bishopsgate, this time a climate camp. The campers had run onto the road and quickly blocked the traffic with their easy-to-assemble tents. They say they plan to spend the night in the city to highlight their concerns about global warming.
I think protesting is the only way we can do it now. I don't know what else to do. I think everyone feels powerless and everyone is angry, and I think there's not anyone in this country who doesn't care about the future of their children.
But the peaceful climate change message was largely drowned out by the bloody clashes around the Bank of England. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, in the City of London.
Well, let's just take another look behind us here as you rejoin us live outside the Bank of England. You can see black smoke just billowing there where the protesters have lit a fire in the street, and they're behind these barricades where they've been actually penned in by the riot police. If we turn our camera around this way, we can see the riot police, a huge phalanx of them really. They've been, some of them on foot, some of them have been on horseback as well. And this road is cordoned off now, and so are all the roads around this area. So effectively the situation that you've got here is that these protesters actually can't get out of this area, and there's a few missiles being thrown at the moment. If we just take another look here at the protesters, they're throwing missiles now, and we just okay. Police are charging now. The police are charging, and we're just moving out through the barricades. So police, I don't know if you can still see us, but the police have just mounted a charge against the protesters, and now burning objects are being thrown at the police. If we can just move our camera back in here, there's actually just down there behind us we can see that are burning objects, and there's some more fighting now, some quite ferocious fighting going on between the riot police and the protesters, and the riot police have their truncheons drawn. There's been this kind of sporadic clash going on all through the afternoon here in the City of London. There's been a sporadic flashes of violence as the riot police and the protesters have clashed with the police. The protesters are saying that really they just wanted to go home, that they'd been penned in by the riot police. And certainly this demonstration, this anti-capitalist, anti-globalisation protest, which began at around midday today, when about 3,000 to 4,000 protesters initially converged here in the City of London. They came here from 4 different underground stations around the Bank of England, and this was the epicentre of their Financial Fool's Day, as they called it, a pun on April Fool's Day. That was the message that the bankers were to blame for the economic crisis here. Well, as you can see, it's quite a lot of clashes continue. I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague Robert Hall, who's just down the road from here at Bishopsgate, where there is another protest going on right now. Let's talk to Robert.